Since the beginning of this year, an estimated 32,000 people have arrived on Europe's southern shores. Many more have failed to make it that far. 350 people died when their boat sank trying to reach the Italian island of Lampedusa. That's just one case of many. Since that disaster, there's been an increase in air and sea patrols. But what's the answer in the long term? To discuss that question, I'm joined now by UKIP MEP Roger Helmer and the Greens immigration spokesman Jean Lambert. And I'll start with you, Jean, if I may. The scale of the problem, just give us an idea of how big an issue this is. For example, the number of people that the Italian and Maltese and so forth authorities are having to pick up every day, every week.
Well, it varies. It's seasonal. It also varies with the international situation. I mean, you obviously saw a lot more people coming during the conflict in Libya, just as you're now seeing more coming because of the situation in Syria. And people, will be looking for a way to somewhere that they consider to be safer than where they currently are. So at times you can be looking at sort of maybe 1,000 or so a day arriving in Malta, Lampedusa, maybe even slightly more. And this is something which, is not new. I mean, I visited Lampedusa, it must be about 7 or 8 years ago. And we still haven't really found a way of actually dealing with the people when they arrive.
It's not a new problem, Roger Helmer, but it is a problem nonetheless. What's going wrong in your view?
Well, it's been highlighted, of course, by this recent tragedy in Lampedusa, and I think we must separate two things. The first thing is the humanitarian issue. If somebody is drowning, you go and get them out if you possibly can. It would be appalling to do otherwise. But what you cannot then say is because we have dragged this person out of the sea, they now have an inalienable right to come to Europe and be resettled somewhere or other. And the danger is we're creating perverse incentives here, because if it becomes clear that there are more and more boats out there from Europe rescuing people in these rickety North African boats and bringing them ashore in Europe, what is going to happen? You're going to get more and more and more refugees coming. So we must have a policy, yes, humanitarian, don't let people drown, but we must turn them around and send them back. That is absolutely fundamental.
Jean Lambert, turn around and send them back.
Well, again, there are a number of different things going on here. If these are people who are actually claiming asylum, they have a right to claim asylum under international law, under law which the UK has signed up to. All of the European Union countries are. A number of the countries in North Africa aren't. So, they have a right to claim. They have a right to have their claims examined on an individual basis. That, again, is EU law. It's also UK national law. Then there's the issue about people who have not come to claim asylum, but who have actually come to work. And again, the law is clear. Those are people that you have to look at returning to their country of origin, providing you are not putting them in danger by doing so.
So it is a very complicated issue. This idea of increased border controls that seems to be taking place over the last few weeks, is that a sustainable solution, given what Roger Helmer is saying, is that it could actually lead to more people being picked up by European boats, could lead to more problems?
Well, I think if more people are being picked up by boat, then that's a vast improvement on leaving them to drown, which has also happened in the past. Part of that is because, for example, Italian law criminalises people. Fishermen are really nervous that they will be criminalised because they have picked up people in distress at sea. Yes, by all means, we should be doing that, but it's not the primary purpose. That's humanitarian rescue. If what you actually want to be doing is more in the way of border controls, then, frankly, I think there are better ways to do it than actually having drones circulating around the Mediterranean.
I mean, we have a responsibility, surely, don't we, Roger Helmer, not just on the humanitarian front, but on that issue that Jean Lambert's talking about there of people being able to seek asylum in Europe.
Well, I think the asylum system and the asylum laws were created in days when the numbers were nothing like they are now. Jean has already explained that if you claim asylum, you have certain rights. If you're looking for employment, you can be sent back. So what's going to happen? Everybody knows that. They're all going to claim asylum. They're all going to absorb months and perhaps years of claims and appeals and enormous expense, and eventually somebody will have an amnesty and they'll all be allowed to stay. I don't think that the laws we have on asylum actually are fit for purpose in the 21st century, because the numbers are becoming enormous, and of course they all claim asylum, and of course many of them come from places where life is very difficult. And I'm sorry about that, but we can't solve it ourselves.
Okay, answer that point then,
Well,
Gina. We're going to end up with unsustainable numbers of people coming to Europe.
Well, that depends what happens in terms of the world situation, both economically and in terms of conflict. And of course in terms of changing environmental situations, which also lead into those two things. But in terms of what is happening at the moment, I mean, I have visited a number of reception centres at Europe's borders and within the European Union. It's very clear there when you meet a lot of the people there. A number of them are absolutely clear. What they want to do is they want to come, they want to work. They're not claiming asylum. Even some of them who could claim don't. So there are those who are absolutely clear that's what they want. And what they want is an opportunity which they feel is fair and open to them to be able to have that possibility.
Okay.
That's very different from those who are claiming asylum because, because of what they have, the way in which they have been attacked and are persecuted in their country of origin.
Okay, we'll have to move on slightly from that point, because I want to ask you about this idea of surveillance. The European Parliament recently backed a migrant surveillance system, if I can call it that. They call it Eurosaw. It sounds like some kind of dinosaur, but it's not. It's about it's a surveillance system. Is that going to help, Jean Lambert, first of all?
There may be some aspects of it which will help. And I mean, this thing has been in process. It's not recent. It's not a response to Lampedusa. This has, again, been in process since 2008. And the idea of it is to link up a lot of the surveillance systems that there already are at member states' borders, exchange of information, to also have a much better patrol mechanism within the Mediterranean. I think a lot of that is very positive. But, it's being marketed a bit under the aspect of, well, we're trying to solve crime. Most of it is actually about migration, which is not the same thing. I think there are better ways of dealing with migration. There are probably better ways of dealing with crime.
I mean, would you accept, Roger Helmer, that there's a need for Europe to play a role in this, coordinating, as this Eurosaw idea is, coordinating the different efforts of different countries?
I would very much like to see the European Union making more effort to control immigration flows in the Mediterranean, and indeed from Eastern Europe. But when I say that, I would stand back as a British Eurosceptic and say, my party wants Britain out of the European Union. We don't want to be part of Schengen. We want Britain to have proper immigration controls. Now, Britain doesn't at the moment, but we need them.
Okay, all right. Well, accepting that, that point, if that was the case, wouldn't Britain still need to take part in kind of a cross-border Europe-wide system?
There might well be opportunities for police cooperation or border force cooperation. We in UKIP have nothing against cooperation with other countries. Our problem is being governed by foreign institutions.
And this issue, as things stand, obviously Britain is a member of the European Union. Do we need to work with perhaps our African neighbouring countries as well as the European countries to find some kind of solution to this?
Well, I mean, this is a role that I'd be happy for Europe to perform. There is a case for working in those countries to control refugee flows within North African countries and possibly to assist in developing those countries so they are more attractive for people to stay in and people don't feel the need to go. But those are long-term objectives. They're not going to deliver a short-term answer.
Jean Lambert, we're going to have to wrap up very briefly, but what should Europe do about this problem? What do you want to see happen now?
Well, I want to see Europe support the United Nations working more in Libya and bringing them, into a decent system. I also want to see the European Union actually sorting out the issue of rescue at sea and who then takes responsibility for the people rescued. This has been dragging on for years. We are seeing a lot of crocodile tears at the moment about Lampedusa in the recent weeks. That is something that they could be doing immediately to at least give people a chance of living long enough to find out what then happens to them.
Okay, well, it's a very difficult issue to solve, but we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks ever so much, both of you, for joining me.